Hi everyone. So before we dive into the uh, playthrough, I would like to show you the Valencia deck that I'm about to play. I think I'm onto something here. Call me silly, call me delusional, but I think this is a pretty good way of building Valencia. Um, the first thing you need to settle with any good deck. I'm trying to build a tier 2, approaching tier 1.5 deck with this ID. And one of the first things you need to do is to find a good economic engine. There are basically four solid economic engines established in the current metagame. The first is Security Testing Desperado, used by most competitive criminals. This obviously won't work in this deck. It costs too much influence. The second is Magnum Opus, which is a pretty fine solution until you realize that memory is a huge issue in Anox, and if you're playing a 50 card deck, you don't really want to use stuff like mem strips or Jin to extend your memory, because yeah, that's another combo piece, another moving part you need to find. It makes your deck much more unreliable. The third economic engine, which many people are playing now, is Lucky Find, with lots of burst economy. You see that in max decks, you see that in even Leela decks, and of course, prepaid kit revolves around it. That could be a solution. However, firstly, I think Valencia requires influence to be spent on tutors, not money. And secondly, all these decks share one thing in common, and that is they have powerful card draw. With lots of card draw, you can see more lucky finds and you get more money. With Valencia, your deck is more inconsistent and there's not that much card draw. So I don't think lucky find is the way to go. So that leaves us with the final option, which is Aesop's Cash. I know it sounds weird that I'm using Aesop's Cash and I'm saying I can't afford the influence. Aesop's Cash here in this case costs 7 influence, Lucky Find only costs 6. However, I think as a longer term solution, Aesop's Cash will do much more. And Aesop's Cash is not as good an economic engine in my opinion as Lucky Find, but this deck doesn't need that much money as most other decks because of the bad publicity. So I think the more interesting part to talk about is the breakers then. This really looks like the Kalimsha prepaid kit deck in the sense that you are using a toolbox of solutions as opposed to, a Corroder, a York, a Mimic, and a Data Sucker, and you just go in and those ice that you cannot deal with, you cry. This deck has a solution for every ice in the game. Small caveat, of course. The one blind spot that this deck has is against Strength 4 Sentries. Barriers can easily be broken, whether using Black Cat or Corroder, and I think the biggest innovation of this deck is the use of Refractor in Anarch, Stealth Breakers in Anarch for that matter. All I have are 3 Ghost Runners, but I think that should be enough for most of my breaking needs. I mean, if you think about it, any code gate that is strength 5 or higher can actually be broken by David. So Refractor is mainly there for the strength 4 Lotus Field and RSVP and all those strength 4 code gates. That's about it. So Ghost Runner will almost certainly never run out. And Black Cat, well, it's a little bonus if I'm playing against Hive or Nick Silver and I cannot find my parasites. It's also good against Wall of Static. So yeah, let's give this deck a little shot and see how it goes. So right off the bat, I find myself with a fantastic matchup. I'm up against Gagarin Deep Space, which means that his ID ability is completely nullified by mine. Yeah, sure, there are Gagarin decks that build vertically, that force you to access multiple upgrades and assets in one run. Therefore, the one backpack won't be enough to cover it all. But still, most good Gagarin decks nowadays will realize that stuff like Pack Campaign is good to run. The same reason why you run Pack Campaigns in the Earth Hub, because it's so much harder. You provide so much more benefit. So there will definitely be Pack Campaigns in this deck, and Valencia takes care of them very easily because essentially I don't have to pay the 1 credit tax to check it, to trash it. Alright, so my opening hand is okay. There's only cash for money. Cash is not that good an economic source early on. It only gives 2 credits without Grimoire. But that will have to do. I kept this hand mostly because it has lots of breakers and retrieval run, and more importantly, it has Earthrise Hotel. Card draw is very important in this deck. I can't stress that enough. Card draw is very, very important. I tried to make a deck without any card draw because Valencia has a 50 card limit, but it's not going to work. Yeah. The problem with SMC is that even if you use 3 copies, you probably, in most games, you probably won't even see 1 copy of it until you dig through your deck for a couple of turns. So instead of avoiding the issue of card draw, let's just draw lots of cards. So this is a Nerds in Space deck. He starts with an early IT department, and that is very threatening. What I really want to do here is to install my Mimic and trash the IT department, but I don't have the money to trash the IT department, let alone install the Mimic. So I have to let him fire off the IT department, and it's going to snowball into ridiculous strengths very soon. The good news is I have David in my deck. I run 2 copies of it. I can easily trash his IT department later on. On the other hand, I did make a rather big mistake. I did allow him to res the rotor turret on that remote, so I cannot actually use my blackmail on that server right now, which is a huge pity. Because once he starts clicking IT department up now, as he does now, I can't actually install Mimic and run. He can easily pump rotor turret out of Mimic range, so that's a huge worry for me. Actually, I'm not that worried because I do have David after all, so no matter how high IT department is pumped, I can still get through. However, I would still like to defuse it as soon as possible, because once he starts trying to score an agenda off the back of IT department, it's too late to begin thinking about trashing IT department. So I'm still working on a time bomb here. This is the reason why I'm clicking for credits right now. It's not the most optimal thing to do, clicking for credits, but I really need a good amount of credits to begin threatening his server. In the meantime, I discard Black Cat and Medium to my heap so that I can retrieve it later with Retrieval Run. IT department goes up to 6 strength. My go, I first click draw into an imp, which is the perfect card I want to see. This card allows me to trash IT department. But first, I realized that with 2 clicks left, I have no time to trash the IT department. Install Mimic and running would leave me with insufficient resources to tutor the David with SMC. So instead, I'm going to run his centrals, hopefully find an agenda. Even if I don't, I'm going to slow his economy down by trashing his marked accounts with imp. This costs no credits because I'm Valencia. It costs me the 1 bad pub to access his remotes. Yes, in the meantime, I do get a Ghost Runner out. Don't forget, this is actually part of my credit pool when running, so this will come in handy if I go bankrupt. Yes. So yes, it basically extends my credit pool, which is really nice. So in the meantime, he interns his marked accounts back onto the game board and protects it this time to prevent me from imping it, which is a pretty good solution, but I don't really care because marked accounts is very slow economy. So here, I go all in to destroy his IT department. And as in response, he pumps Roto Turret to 6 strength. Perfect. I tutor my David and destroy it. Now, during the game, we had little debate on this. He thought that he could, in response to that, he could then pump Ice Wall so that it would lower Roto Turret strength to strength 4. You are not allowed to do that. You have to lower Roto Turret to strength 4 before I declare the usage of my SMC. So because of this, he lost his IT department. And for those of you wondering, I had enough credits to tutor my Cerberus Cujo, the Sentry Breaker, and break a 4 strength Roto Turret. So either way, I was not going to be locked out of IT department. I Ghost Runner credits there, I was able to do that. So I basically destroyed 2 turns of his hard work by imping away his IT department. That was pretty huge. And yeah, so now I basically reset him to base 0, square 1 basically, and he's pretty poor as well, so I don't have to worry about the flatline threat at all. In the meantime, he solidifies his scoring remote, or his, IT department remote. He might have another copy in his hand. This gives me time to set up, draw a couple more cards. I now have Aesop's Pawn Shop, which is invaluable. Chopbot is nice, but it cannot compare to the sheer economic power that Aesop's gives. In fact, once I find my Aesop's, I'm more than willing to Aesop's Chopbot away, because Chopbot has more than served its purpose, which is to draw the Aesop's so I can use Aesop's instead. This allows me to save 2 influence, because instead of running 3 Aesop's, I'm running 2 Aesop's and 1 Chopbot. Yep. It's pretty important to see one of these cards. And a lot of cards in my deck are actually synergized with Aesop's. You have the Cerberus Cujo, you have used imps, you have daily cards. A lot of cards can be Aesop's away for lots of cash, and that's the whole point of playing this deck, using all the disposable stuff and trashing them when I'm done with it. In the meantime, he gets a pet campaign going. Pretty useless considering that I have an imp in my hand. And he gets another IT department going, which is again annoying, but I don't really care, as I said. I have David to deal with it, and more importantly, I do have Parasite to deal with it as well. So now I can actually blackmail his IT department server. He's not going to get this IT department going for too long. I install the imp and trash his pet campaign. Once again, this is free, so I'm really stalling him at this point. I mean, he's trying to play a stalling game himself by accumulating lots of tokens on IT department, but it's really irrelevant against Anarchs. I think against Anarchs, his best bet during this game was to just quickly score agendas instead of going for the IT department. So I think he's making a big mistake here by attempting to defend a remote that has no rest ice against Valencia Estevez. It's not going to end well for him. I'll guarantee that. So I'll give him one last chance. I mean, not put it another way. I'm in absolutely no hurry to destroy his IT department. If anything, I want him to waste clicks pumping up IT departments, so that when I do trash his IT department, he will have lost a lot of tempo. Tempo that could have been spent gaining clicks, drawing cards, advancing agendas. The only thing I'm worried about right here, in fact, is Elizabeth Mills and Executive Bootcamp. Elizabeth Mills to a lesser extent, because it doesn't seem like he's running bad pub dishing ice or cards or hostile takeovers. But Executive Bootcamp could be a real threat. So if he installs a new asset, I need to quickly challenge his IT department in case that's an Executive Bootcamp and he gets a free res the next turn. Well, I've had enough, so I'm just going to run with blackmail and trash his IT department, wasting 7 of his clicks, 8 clicks, including the install. So yeah, and yes, after that he did mention that he has bootcamps in deck. He just didn't find them. Well, my only response is that against Valencia Estevez, it might be wise to just mulligan for that bootcamp or that Elizabeth Mills, because it completely changes the game and makes it so much easier for you. So that's down to player decision. It is a bad matchup, admittedly, still. But now I'm looking in a very fabulous position, mostly because I have a medium out and I have a York in hand. That means I'm going to ham with R&D. And York is really such a good icebreaker in today's context. There are so many corps that are running Enigmas, Quandaries, and pop-up windows now. It's so good. Alright, here it only cost me 2 credits to trash Jackson Howard, so why not? I get to see more cards with medium anyway, and I get to trash his Executive Bootcamp as well. It does cost me quite a few credits, but I think it's worth it. Trashing Jackson Howard means that he cannot dig through his deck to find essential pieces, or essential eyes rather, that will block me from accessing R&D. And trashing Executive Bootcamp means that blackmails will always remain a threat. In the meantime, he tries to score an agenda, or perhaps a trap. I don't know which. But at this point, I don't really care. With a 3 loaded medium and an R&D that's essentially free to access, I'm definitely taking the R&D over the not so guaranteed remote. So I'm just going to keep running, and I see lots of cards. All I find is a Glen Station. So when you see Glen Station, more or less, you can be quite sure they are running Government Takeover. So you should expect that he doesn't have that many agendas in deck. And Government Takeover is in fact a very good agenda to run in this sort of deck. If you have IT department running, and you can completely lock a runner from accessing any sort of servers, you can safely score the Government Takeover. In the meantime, because he scores an agenda, instead of defending his R&D, I'm just going to go ham once again on R&D and basically drill it all the way to the ground. He's completely helpless at this point. I'm just going to access as many cards as I humanly can. But I still don't see agendas. So yes, his agenda density is pretty low. Here I run archives because I thought that he had Jackson in his remote and he was trying to dump agendas into archives. It seems like his hand is quite flooded with agendas. I could attempt to check his hand, but why would I bother doing so when I can chalk up medium tokens instead? So I do run R&D one last time to find the 6 agenda points from the Project Atlas. So basically, I'm more or less going to win this game. Even if he purges virus counters at this point, I'm just going to install Corroder and whack his HQ and show that he doesn't get any agendas off. In the meantime, he does advance an agenda in the remotes. So there's a double advance agenda. I'm a little concerned over it, so I attempt to run it. Because if it's a 3-pointer, it brings him to 5 points. He's on match point. That's not healthy for me at all. So here he reses an Ash against me. He doesn't have too many credits, so I'm not worried about anything too dangerous. He boosts the trace by a lot. I can beat it since I'm Ghost Runner, but I'll just take the cheaper, safer option, trash the Ash, jack out, and rerun the server. It could be a trap, but I'm not too concerned about traps at this point. Even if it's an aggressive secretary, there are lots of ways I can play around it. Turns out it is a high-risk investment. He was agenda flooded. I won the game. So it was a bad matchup for him, admittedly. This is not very representative of the typical teams I have with Valencia. But I think it is definitely a pretty solid deck considering the ID. You notice that I basically had solutions for most of the ice in the game, which is very terrifying. The only thing I was missing that game was my Grimoire. The console is very badly needed once you are set up with your rig, because 4 memory units doesn't give you much wiggle room. It basically can only hold your 3 standard breakers and some sort of pressure card of your choice, be it Imp or Medium. You don't even have space for a Parasite. Data Sucker might seem like the perfect include in this sort of deck that uses the Anarch Breaker suite. However, I'm against it because it is so vulnerable to purging, and more importantly, it basically saps away tempo from you and is useless most games. In fact, most games, you don't need to pump your breakers to deal with ice, and you have Refractor to cover you for the code gates. For barriers, you rarely meet strength 4 barriers. Even the strength 3 barriers are not all that common, and you have Black Cat for that. It's only the sentries that you really need to pump strength for. Even then, you have Cerberus Cujo to take care of that. And for anything that's strength 5 or higher, there's always David. So basically, I think it's time to move on from Data Sucker, and this is a good way to do so, while spending minimal influence on the Breaker Suite. Thanks for watching and happy net running. Goodbye.